All right, we're starting early. All right, so we are live. Let me just double check that we're live on our page.
And then, if you give me the link, I'll put it right now.
All right, we're live right now. So, let me see. Let me click it. Yep, there we are. All right, Raj, the YouTube link. All right, Raj, I'm going to email you the YouTube link, okay?
Okay.
Forward. We're on there. Like it's fine. We have no followers right now, so it's like I don't think anyone's watching. Rush.
We'll get them there.
I just sent it over. Yeah, everyone's been cool.
Awesome.
Oh, we got one person watching. Nope, no one's watching. That was me. But yeah, man, it's been awesome. It really has. It's been a really good, fun process to get to interview people that I read every day.
Awesome.
It's how have you been? Busy?
Yeah, I mean, it's been tough because I've been working a lot, like with the Warrior season ramping up. They had the game 72 yesterday, and so it's been kind of like, how can I fit in guests? How can I fit into podcasts here and there? And a lot of it has just been, I don't have time to reach out, and I'm working all the time, so I just got to do a podcast myself. And
yeah,
that's kind of what it's been for the last month or so, which kind of sucks because it was draft month and draft week and everything, but we're doing good. The Warriors could go for the next month and a half for all I know, but
that play-in game.
Yeah, they got that on Wednesday. Then they got the I guess other playoff game on Friday. So it should be maybe dying down, but who knows, man? Might have to fit some guests in during the day when I got a game at night, and we'll just see kind of what happens.
It's tough. It's tough. It really is. It's during the day for work, man. It's it can be difficult.
And I always try to give myself time to edit and stuff. If they say something worth making a graphic for, and just I don't have time right now. It's the unfortunate thing, and I want to give my guests the due diligence of hey, I care about you coming on, and I want to give you the opportunity to if you say something, I want to put it out there, but sometimes it doesn't work out.
Yeah. It's
all right.
You shared it away. I'm going to share it on Twitter too.
Let me make sure that the link is working. I'm going to check on my other.
It's funny. It's the live is delayed on our Twitter for a second. Yeah. All right, good deal. All right, we're on there. All right. This is either going to fail spectacularly or it's going to be phenomenal. So let's rock and roll.
All right. Well, even if nobody watches, it's all good.
I'll be good. We're talking 49ers. That's all that matters.
There you go.
All right. Let's go. Let's rock and roll.
All right, here we go. I'm back. Let's go.
All right, we back. We good? All right.
Yeah.
All right. Listen, let's get started. Raj, you shared it. So we're good to go. All right. So for obviously Sterling that's here, and we talked about it before, Raj and I decided to start a podcast. I mean, we've talked on and off every other day for, I don't know, 4 months now. So this is our SF 49ers podcast. We'll be talking bi-weekly, and Sterling Bennett, Sterling Bennett isn't our SF 49ers. 49ers Access is our very first guest. Sterling, welcome aboard, my man. Thank you so much. We're just three guys that like talking about the San Francisco 49ers, and here we are, man.
Yeah, it's exciting. I know we've all kind of chatted before, whether it's DMs or on podcasts, and it's really happy to get all of us together at one time to talk Niners and the schedule, and even get into some of that Thicky Garoppolo conversation today.
Thicky Garoppolo. Jimmy Garoppolo shows up to 49ers minicamp looking like he put on a few pounds of muscle. Is it muscle or fat? What are we saying here?
I'll say bulk. I think he's ready. I think he's ready to play 17 games. I think after the offseason he had, I think after the constant barrage of anti-Jimmy Garoppolo sentiment from Niner fans, or even pro sentiment from New England fans trying to coerce the Niners to give him back to them, I think he's ready to prove himself. I know he took a lot of hate this offseason, some justifiable, some not, but I think he has to prove himself, and I think he's quietly done that privately, and I think 2021 could be a great year for Garoppolo if he can stay healthy, which if the bulk he's put on looks like bulk and it is bulk, I think it could be a good year for him.
Yeah, I agree. The word you use, bulk, is a perfect word. I think he stacked a little muscle, and I agree with what you said. Is in order to prevent those injuries, I think he beefed up himself to sustain those hits, because that's the biggest that's the biggest thing that he's had to face. The biggest liability he's had is staying healthy, right? And every time everybody critiques him, it's he can't stay healthy, he's injury prone, this and that. So I think he went into this offseason knowing that, and he mentioned that on his offseason press conference when they left the team. He says he knows he needs to stay healthy. Yeah. And this whole offseason, he's went quiet about it. They drafted a quarterback, Trey Lance, and he doesn't get upset. He's welcomed him to the team. He's been a leader. He's done everything right. He was on CBS Sports Radio 2 weeks ago, and he says he knows it's a competition, but he wants to take this kid under his wing. So he did everything right. And I think he's added that bulk, like you said, to make sure he stays healthy, because this is a big season for him. He has to prove himself to everybody in the media, because the media really doesn't like him. And like you said, some of it's justifiable. Some of it is just not. It's just people hate him for whatever reason, and I don't think he deserves a lot of that criticism. So we'll see how it goes.
Yeah, I think, look, it's funny because so far Jimmy Garoppolo has handled this like the consummate pro, right? Like he's done everything right. He's from a PR perspective, you couldn't have asked for a better situation. Like you don't have a situation where people are leaking information about Jimmy being unhappy, Jimmy wanting to be traded, because what ends up happening is Trey Lance then has to answer questions about how do you feel about Jimmy Garoppolo saying X, Y, and Z, or rumors that Jimmy Garoppolo wants out. And by all accounts, it seems like Jimmy Garoppolo is going to be a good mentor, and it's a win-win situation for everyone. If Jimmy Garoppolo plays well, right, and Jimmy Garoppolo takes the 49ers deep, two things happen. Trey Lance sits for a year or for most of the season and learns the playbook and comes in maybe sporadically and plays. Jimmy Garoppolo balls out, right? You want him to ball out, because what ends up happening, you don't keep him next year. I don't think the three of us agree that he's staying next year. I think it would be a minor miracle if he did. But you recoup some value by trading him to a team that maybe will now give the 49ers a second-round pick, and who knows, maybe a first-round pick, depending how he plays. Granted, first-round pick, that's a little bit of a pipe dream, but a lot could happen between now and January 2022 or February 2022. We have an 18-game schedule, 17-game schedule. Yeah. And how bananas is that? Like, we wanted to talk about the schedule. We have a question. Hold on. What do you guys think the wide receiver depth will look like?
Oh, that's a good one.
Ooh, GJ, thank you. And by the way, guys, if you're not subscribed to the channel, subscribe to the channel. We're going to be posting videos on a fairly regular basis. Sterling for sure is going to be a recurring guest. So I'm going to put the onus on you guys, because you guys are the experts. I just talk for a living.
Go ahead. You go take this first, Sterling.
Yeah, I think it's tough. It's when you look at the way the Niners went about the offseason, they didn't add really any receivers. It was Austin Watkins being undrafted. You thought maybe Amari Rodgers could be a guy in the third round, but he went to Green Bay, which is unfortunate because they're a rival. But there were some names out there. You're hoping they might just grab somebody, grab one receiver, one body for you, and they grab nobody. Well, then you're saying Mohamed Sanu, then you're saying Austin Watkins Jr. And Austin Watkins Jr., some people had him as a number 2 receiver on their board. That's a lot to live up to in the class they had this year, but he does have potential, obviously. But when you're losing Kendrick Bourne the year before, you lose Emmanuel Sanders, you need that number 3 guy. And if you're asking me if it's Marquise Lee, who just signed today, who can be a depth piece, well, it's Mohamed Sanu, who got cut last year to keep Dante Pettis. Like, that number 3 receiver is a big question, but I do think they have some people, a.k.a. Jalen Hurd, if he's healthy, that they can fit into this slot. But again, that question like 2020, if healthy, is the biggest curse this Niners team has had since Shanahan and Lynch has taken over. So I'm not buying it. They may have to make a move. Maybe it's Julio Jones, but that's kind of a pipe dream right now.
Yeah, definitely a pipe dream to get Julio. I know a lot of people are like, oh, man, they didn't put him on their media calendar. Julio Jones, do you know the quote that Shanahan said a couple years ago? If a Julio Jones is available, you have to do what you can to get him. I don't think we're getting Julio Jones. I mean, I did like the Marquise Lee signing today. He's a solid depth player. If he's healthy and he could be anything of what he was in the past, he could be what KB brought to this team. And I think Kendrick Bourne is a big loss. And I don't think people think that is as big as a loss as they should, because they were like, oh, Kendrick Bourne, he just dances a lot. But red zone target, third down, he didn't really, he never missed games. He was durable, and he was a solid number 3 receiver. So I think that definitely is a hole that needs to be looked at. But
Yeah.
what you said too, Sterling, is I think they really are banking on Jalen Hurd to come back. That was one of the questions they asked him in the offseason after the draft. They said he's rehabbing. They feel he's going to be ready. That's a lot of pressure on Jalen because he hasn't stayed healthy his whole career.
Yeah.
Jennings, you got River Craycraft, Sanu, Travis Benjamin. Are those guys going to be able to contribute? I don't know. Debo and Ayuk, we know they're great. The duo is going to be amazing. They got to stay healthy and they got to be able to, be in there. And then you got Kittle, who's like the super player. So it's kind of like, oh, maybe you didn't need a receiver because you have Kittle. I think the guy that makes the biggest jump and the biggest leap is my boy Richie James, man. I think they got to give this guy the opportunities. We've all screamed that there's been a lot of fans that say, hey, if this guy gets the opportunity, I think he could be something big. You could throw him in the slot. This guy's shifty. He runs a great route tree. I think Richie James is a guy that could benefit from the offseason departure of Kendrick Bourne and even Trent Taylor and whatnot. Yeah. So we'll see. I like Richie James, but you're right. That is definitely a position that they may still have to look around. A couple years back in 2019 in the offseason, they added Emmanuel Sanders at the trading deadline, and they may have to do something this season. But, hey, Richie James, I'm all for him to have a breakout season.
I like Richie James, too. I think every 49er fan that's been paying attention to the last 2-3 years wants Jalen Hurd to just break out. I mean, I think if he reaches his potential, it could be a nice surprise. Someone asked, Danny Albright asked, and I want to bring this up. When is the Warner deal coming? Will he hold out? So, Danny, I don't think he's going to hold out. The 49ers have plenty of cap room to sign Warner, right? It's going to be a George Kittle-esque kind of situation, I think. I mean, look, Fred Warner, I think, isn't stepping on the field during training camp when practice gets real practice, right? When there's contact, unless he has a deal. I think a deal will happen before then. I don't think anyone needs to worry about Fred Warner not being signed. Do you guys agree?
I 100% agree. I think today, what did the report from Mayoka? He said 80 players were there for voluntary workouts. You don't have to show up. The fact that the leaders like Kittle and Jimmy and Warner and Mike McGlinchey were there, that speaks volumes to how much these players want to play. And I don't think Warner's going to hold out. I think they'll get a deal done. I know I'm pretty sure they know how important he is to his team. Those types of deals take some time. You got to work out the logistics. I think he'll be back and ready to roll with a nice fat contract soon.
I agree too. Someone asked here, what's the easiest comparison to Trey Lance? Someone put up a picture. I don't know who it was, and it was on Twitter. Someone said Randall Cunningham. And that was super intriguing just because Randall Cunningham, for those who don't know, was so ahead of his time. And granted, Randall Cunningham would be the athletic mold quarterback today, or just not even the athletic mold. Randall Cunningham could do both, man. And I thought, wow, that was a pretty good comparison in terms of potential.
Yeah, I mean, you've heard Steve McNair before. You've heard Josh Allen because he's kind of the latest person to come out of a small school and kind of be this boomer bust prospect. And obviously he's been booming in Buffalo. But Matt Barrow said this is Shanahan's chance to get his John Elway because his dad had John Elway in Denver. You've heard people say the last mobile quarterback the Niners had is Kaepernick. And really when it comes down to it, I won't give the most realistic comp. I'll just say that every single player Trey Lance has been compared to has been one of the best quarterbacks of the teams they've been on, whether it is Allen or Steve Young or LA or even Kaepernick in his time. He was an elite talent when he was in his prime. Every quarterback he's been compared to is someone to make any Niner fan be excited for what Lance can bring to this team.
Yeah, 100%.
I agree.
100%.
I like the Steve McNair comparison. I'm a little older, So that
you and me both, brother.
I had coming into the a draft season and then looking him up, and I think he's a big kind of big, hard-nosed running quarterback like McNair with the cannon of an arm. I like that comparison. But the youngsters that are probably watching don't know who Steve McNair is. I could see the Josh Allen, like you said, comes from a small school. He's more of a runner when he first comes into the league, and then I think they'll groom him and make him a passer. So I could see both of those. I like the Josh Allen comparison. I love it.
Yeah, I think if Trey Lance turns out to be any one of those guys, we'll all be very happy to Sterling's point. The one thing that I wanted to talk about with the two of you, because again, everyone knows it was a wacky month. This was probably the wackiest month I can recall as a 49er fan. I think everyone would agree that the draft class on paper is something to be excited about outside of Trey Lance, right? You have a draft class that that includes a few picks that people are really excited about. Trey Sermon being one of them. Raj, you mentioned he's your favorite player. Why is that? Well, not your favorite player, but one guy that you're really excited about.
Yeah. So if you followed my page or you went live with me or whatever, you know I'm high on Trey Sermon. I just love his game. I watched a lot of his film looking at Justin Fields because I was pro Justin Fields before the draft, and he stuck out all the time. I was like, man, this guy really carried that team at stretches of the game. The Northwestern game where he sets the all-time Ohio State rushing record, beating Eddie George, like that type of product, in the Niners offense is going to be so valuable. They have great running backs, a lot of depth now, but I think this guy will eventually become their number one, their workhorse running back. And he's different than anything that Shanahan has because they're usually speed guys. This is a very powerful running back with, fast burst, great elite vision. I think this guy could be like a, Steven Jackson, Todd Gurley, Frank Gore type running back that just elevates the offense. And I think he's going to be there for a long time. A feature back on this team. And again, I love Mostert, but you give him 20 carries, he might, break down a little bit. This guy Sherman is hard to tackle, and I'm just so excited with seeing this type of talent in Shanahan's offense. I think he's going to be a superstar.
Yeah, and I mean, look, we have someone asked about Elijah Mitchell becoming a returner during his rookie season. I don't know about that. I mean, Sterling, you're shaking your head. Yes, I think that's obviously a possibility. Again, you guys watch a lot more film. You guys see a lot more of these players than I do. But I do think that Elijah Mitchell could have a role too, right? Like Elijah Mitchell's one of those guys. Again, the one thing 49er fans should kind of be aware of, and I think most are, is that Bobby Turner can coach the shit out of running backs. Like Bobby Turner could take me and I can run for at least 30 yards a game. I'm 5'6", 160 pounds. And I run like a 5'5", so like drafting guys. Look, Joe Williams was a Joe Williams miss. Like people miss on draft picks. It happens. But one of these two guys are going to hit. And I think one of these two guys are going to hit pretty big. My favorite player outside of Trey Lance, just based on what I've read, what I've seen, the highlights, the David Lombardi had reported on him, or Matt Barrows had, is Talanoa Hufanga from USC. He just looks like a football player. Just sounds like a football player. Just sounds like a guy that's going to be around for a while. And you're like, it's one of those guys. Like, do you remember when Navarro Bowman was drafted? Navarro Bowman was drafted, and people were like, I remember the Roto World write-up. Now it's NBC Edge. They said he would be like a special teamer or like just like a part-time player. Like there's always a guy in the draft, and the 49ers have been great at this with the fifth round of finding gems, right? Dre Greenlaw is like a household name amongst fans. I think this kid Talanoa Hufanga will be too.
Yeah, I think when you look at all the picks, and we can go back to Elijah Mitchell and going back to what Raj said, if Richie James Jr. has to slide into that Kendrick Bourne role, well, then Mitchell has a spot open right for him to slide into. Yeah. So a lot of it just becomes logistics of how the roster shakes up to be. And I do think Mitchell has a specialty. Well, he has other skills, but he has a specialty that can fit into what the Niners may need if Richie James has to move over or Benjamin takes that third roster spot at the receiver position. But I happen to like Ambry Thomas. Yeah, he didn't play last year, and I know that's a name that people go like, well, he didn't play last year. A lot of uncertainty around guys, but when I look at the Niners roster and the way they constructed the draft, it was a lot of players that were drafted to eventually replace guys on one-year deals or with 1 year left on their remaining deal. Marcel Harris, Hufanga is very much like a Harris replacement, can play in the box, a strong safety, but he plays better as like that linebacker type. Ambry Thomas can come in, play the outside edge, said he's a man corner, which to me gets me excited when you have a new defensive coordinator and he goes, I want that guy. We're going to change the defense up a little bit and we're going to play some man. We're going to get physical. We're going to kind of play some nasty Legion of Boom defense like they used to do with Salah's defense in Seattle. So that gets me excited. I think he had a quote. I think it was in his press conference. He said, like, going up against the best of the best is when I become, that top tier guy, when I show off the best. And he mentioned DeAndre Hopkins. Well, that tells me you're playing DeAndre Hopkins twice a year, and I want to see you go one-on-one versus DeAndre Hopkins, and I want you to show how good you actually are. But yeah, I think even Lenore too. You saw the film of Lenore practice picking off Trey Lance. Like, to me, that goes Lenore is going to be groomed to be K1's replacement in 1 year. Hufanga will replace Marcel Harris in 1 year. Maybe Ambry Thomas becomes that Jason Verrett replacement in 1 year. It was a year to draft replacements, but also potential stars. That way, when these guys leave in maybe a year, you have replacements waiting in the wings to take over and become that next wave of Niners defensive players.
That's a great point, Sterling. That's a great point. Raj, you were going to say something. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, I 100% agree. That's exactly what I feel they did. Is they're building this team for the future. Like, yeah, okay, they brought back K'Wan Williams, you bring back Jason Verrett, but 1 year deals, they might tear it up this season and then get a big contract, and they're not going to want to pay those guys because, again, we talked about you re-up Fred Warner, you got Nick Bosa next season on the line. Okay, you have these young guys on a rookie deal, and now it's their time to shine. So I love the Ambry Thomas pick. Actually, he was a dog at Michigan. I don't know he opted out. The story I love about him was that 2019 when he played, he had colitis. He was in the hospital for like 30 days or whatever, lost a ton of weight. He did it. He trained himself. He got out of the hospital. He worked in, and then he goes and plays and he balls out. Like, this kid has a mentality of, I want to be the best. Like he said, that quote against Hopkins, like he had so many quotes in that press conference. I was like, God, man, this kid is just speaking to everybody and showing he's a leader. He was a leader at Michigan. He was a leader of that defense. When you were the number one at Michigan, you're going to be a star. So he was a player. He was went later than he should have because he opted out. Probably would have been a second round pick if he stayed in this season at least. Lenore, I love this kid, a physical. We saw, like you said, the film. He picked off Watkins, and I mean, he just clamped this man down like nobody's business. And he was a friend of Sherman, and you can see that in his game. He's so physical, and these guys are very physical corners. And like you said, the way that they're going to change the defense, I think they're going to be more aggressive. They're going to let these offensive players that they're going up against and say, hey, look, we're going to bring it to you. You need to bring it back because Shanahan loves to make a bully on offense. I think they're doing the same thing on defense. And Lenore, I agree with that. I think eventually he'll be Shark's replacement, K'Wan Williams. Mitchell and, Sermon are the future of the running back because you got Jeff Wilson. And if he kills it, which I think he will, he'll get a big contract. And Raheem Mostert, 1 more year on his deal at 30 years old. I don't know if he'll be back next season. So you got Sermon and Mitchell to come.
That's a great point, Raj. That's a great point. And you both hit on something that's really that it's essentially a fact. They drafted for depth, hoping that at least a few of those guys pan out as starters, like almost like immediately. And by immediately, like I mean in a year or so. In regards to Ambry Thomas, one thing that really stuck out to me is David Lombardi, I believe, wrote an article about Ambry Thomas. It was almost like a profile of sorts. And his Michigan coaches, I think it was Corey Undlin, who's the defensive back coach at Michigan, and I think even his former defensive coordinator at Michigan, who I think has since left the program, they just raved about the kid. And like when you're talking about like a college kid coming to the pros, coaches usually are saying like flowery things, but no, they essentially were like we missed this kid. Like this kid's presence alone and just his leadership. So I'm excited to see what he does. Someone asked, do you think we're bringing back Richard Sherman? I think so. I think it's going to happen. Like, I think the stars are starting to align. I think Richard Sherman kind of went out there and kind of saw what the market was for a corner of his age. And again, this is not to take anything away from Richard Sherman. But the fact of the matter is Richard Sherman probably wasn't going to get a multi-year deal, right? I mean, if he did, more power to him. I think I would venture to say that 49er fans everywhere went from hating the guy to loving him essentially overnight. I think he's going to go down as an all-time great 49er despite his short tenure here. But I think he comes back. I think he sees the way that this team is built. We have a little bit of cap space to sign him, I would imagine. And it's just I guess it's just about working out the deal. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I think Richard Sherman is one of those players who I think we can all admit he isn't Legion of Boone Sherman anymore. He isn't the all-pro Sherman, and that's okay. Like, he's 32, 33 years old. We're not expecting that to be who he is anymore. And yes, he got burned in the Super Bowl. Everyone lost their mind. Oh, Tyreek Hill burned him. Yeah, the fastest guy in the NFL burned the 33-year-old quarterback.
Exactly.
Right? No duh. So, but looking at the relationship he has with Lenore and this defense, even Mosley talked about it, I think, on a live stream with SF Niners. Like, he talked about it. And I think when you have young guys like Thomas and Lenore and a defense that wants to instill physicality out of its cornerbacks, Sherman's the guy you got to bring in. He is handsy as can be at the line. He is someone you want to bring in and to teach the 21-year-old kid who hasn't played in a year, this is how you do it in the big time. And so I think Again, probably an incentive-based deal, 4 or 5 mil, see what he can do. I don't think he's going to be a starter. I don't think he should be, but a solid second tier rotational player to help teach and play, I think is honestly the best option for not only Sherman, but also us as well. He can play rotationally, can play situationally where he can kind of increase his value as he gets older. And who knows? Maybe this is the year where he gets to ride into the sunset and get that ring like Deion Sanders did with us for a year in the 90s.
I agree with that. As far as Sherman, I think he will be back. And I think before the draft going, the offseason, he was testing the market. But again, an Asian corner who he's a Hall of Fame player. I think he wanted to see what his value was. But again, he was on the Stephen A. Smith show a week before the draft. And he was also on the Chris Collinsworth podcast. And he told them both, I'm just going to wait until the draft comes because I know these teams are looking to draft younger players. So eventually,
you got pizza coming out? Who's that pizza?
Maybe, man.
Who's got pizza?
So with Sherman there, he knew that the draft process was going to be a certain way, so he waited to test the waters. But then, he had some talks with the Niners, and I think he realized, hey, look, I might be able to go back and be that mentor, like you said, Sterling. And he doesn't have to play 30 snaps a game anymore. He can be sprinkled in 10 snaps, 15 snaps, and be an extra coach on the sideline, and that's going to be so critical for the development of Ambry Thomas, of Lenore, of Tim Harris, who's still a young player in the team that hasn't had any burn. So
great point, Raj.
He's a really, really good leader, and I think he'll realize that he doesn't have to go out there and be what Richard Sherman was 8 years ago. He can be on there 10 snaps and get that Super Bowl championship, and like you said, right off of the sunset, that's a win-win for both of us. We get an extra coach on the field with the new defensive coordinator. That would be so huge for DeMeco Ryans and his development and the young players. So
I think he plays more than 10 snaps a game if he comes back, just for the simple fact that that the way that the 49ers seem to rotate their players, right? It's just like they're not so married to one guy being on the field for one long period of time, so to speak. Now, again, it's defense, it's cornerback, so a lot of it is how you're playing, what the mojo's like. But I think if he becomes back, he's a little bit more than a part-time player. Because I think he can still contribute. I mean, he was hurt last year, but I would like to think that he comes back and the spot is his until it's not. You know what I mean? Like he almost has first dibs on like that spot. So we'll see. Let's shift over to the schedule. You guys cool with that? Let's shift over to the schedule because I think
I wanted to add one more thing before we get to the schedule because we didn't talk about him. And when we were talking about rookies, Aaron Banks, the number 2 pick.
Oh, yeah.
A lot of people don't talk about this, but I love the pick. The O-line was something that was really, just beat up and it was demoralized by injuries last season. And I think that was a really big statement that they want to revamp the O-line. And again, the future is set now with this guy. If he could start for 4 or 5 years on that right side, it's going to be a very cornerstone play. He could be a perennial Pro Bowler. And when you hit on a lineman, they usually stick with your team for a very, very long time. And the right side, with McGlinchey, who's a great, great run blocker, he didn't have someone strong next to him. So I think he had to do a lot of extra work in the pass protection area. And now I think with him and Banks, who he has a connection with from Notre Dame, I think they'll be able to play a little bit better if their communication. And you got Alex Mack, who that was a money signing. I think the O-line is going to be really, really, really much improved this season. And I think that Aaron Banks pick was a much better pick than people are even. I don't know. I just don't see a lot of people talk about Aaron Banks because it's a lineman, not a sexy pick, but I love the pick.
Yeah, I agree. Shifting just over to the schedule, but before we do that, you made a great point. If you hit on an offensive lineman, you're hitting on an offensive lineman for years, not just 4 years, not contract. You're hitting on an offensive lineman for a very long time. And we all know, man, it doesn't matter how good you are, how good of a quarterback you are, that offensive line, if it's not good, it's over for you. And you might get a flash in the pan season where it takes you far, but consistently you need a good offensive line. Yeah. Let's talk schedule. Favorite game for each of you off the bat?
Ooh, and I think I might have to say that Week 7 game against the Colts. That's just one of those games where,
funny enough,
great minds think alike, but there was so much emotion around the loss in February in 2019, 2020 to Patrick Mahomes, and a lot of fans, and even the team was saying themselves, revenge tour 2020, and then all of a sudden Buckner gets traded, and you're saying, what's going on? Like I don't understand. Then the Armstead gets extended, and there are so many fans saying you're taking a 1-year wonder who I think can play fantastic this season. He can do great, but Buckner was the consistency. And for 4 years under Chip Kelly and the first couple years in Shanahan, and you're like, what are we doing? And there's a lot of emotion that goes into that. Fans still today will say, why did we trade DeForest Buckner? And there'll be fans in 20 years saying, arguably one of the worst trades in Niner history, because that's just how emotional we are. That he was the one person in a very tumultuous time in Niners history we can look to and say, thank you for playing. Thank you for going out there every single week and kicking ass. Like he was the guy.
Yeah.
And so I think being able to play him again, see him again, and see him in prime time and kind of have it be not really a homecoming, but kind of more of like a reunion where you get to see Buckner back playing the red and gold. And maybe some fans might say, hey, you see Armstead had 1 sack and Buckner had 3. Like you're going to have that conversation.
Or that Kinlaw comparison.
On Monday. Exactly.
That
that game is one I'm going to love.
That is definitely one of my top games. I love DeForest Buckner, and you're right. Yeah. He brought it every week when we were in the darkest of darkest times. Like our team was so bad, but you can always count on Buckner to give you 1,000% every week. He was the heart and soul of that team.
Very professional. And professional.
When he got traded, it was like your heart was ripped out because you're right. Like they made the thank you post and everybody was crying. Him and Armstead were boys. They brought in from Oregon. Oh my God, the Oregon D-line. And it was tough. And then you bring in Kinlaw, and he's been scrutinized now. So it's going to be a very bittersweet game. I'm definitely looking forward to that one. But my game I'm looking forward to, the home opener against the Green Bay Packers. Because guess what? The 49ers had to play in Arizona last season. They had no stadium, no fans in the stadium because of stupid COVID. That was horrible, not being able to go to games. The fact that fans are finally going to be able to go back to Levi Stadium, that crowd, that first day back, it's going to be, I can already feel like I'm getting chills just thinking about how electric it's going to be. And the last home game we played was against Green Bay in the NFC Championship in 2019. The energy in that stadium is going to be absolutely off the chain. And your boy's going to be there. So.
You're going to be there. It's funny enough. Like I mentioned it to Raj before, and that's why I kind of like grinned when you said the Colts game. I'm flying out for the Colts game. And me and my girlfriend are going out, and I'm like, damn, like which game do I go to? And I'm like, Sunday Night Football, 49ers, Colts. DeForest Buckner comes back. If stars align, it can be a Super Bowl preview game. You know what I mean? And I thought about the Packers game too, and now Raj is making me second guess. So
yes,
that's for you, Raj. But yeah, and the why I second guess is because Raj mentioned the fact that place is going to be rocking. That place is going to be rocking. It's the home opener. It's week 3, but there are a lot of good games. Like obviously the Rams. The Rams game, both Rams games are going to be interesting. As I mentioned earlier to you guys before we came on the air, had the opportunity to speak with John Middlecoff today, and those are the 2 games that he's looking forward to. Like he was like that Rams game, like with Matthew Stafford. It's like McVay has a toy, like he has his toy now. So they're going to play the Niners different. We'll see. Who knows, right? Like I don't think that there's any Brunskill be your daddy. Like there's not. Anytime I see the Brunskill daddy memes, I'm like, look, I think Brunskill's a great cult like follow. Like you know what I mean? I think he's a good enough player. But Aaron Donald's Aaron Donald. So I don't know.
But now they got Big Daddy Banks playing right guard. So
they got 2 daddies on the line. Jesus,
keep him in check. His stepdaddy. Now I'm telling you, I think Aaron Donald's gonna be very upset coming into this game because we made him look foolish. And Debo, who's Aaron? It's gonna be that's definitely a big rivalry game. All the NFC West games are gonna be games that
be a shit show
on the calendar. You're right, Matt Stafford. Now it's gonna be a different test. The Seahawks games are always a battle with Russell Wilson, and those Cardinals games they really revamped that team on offense, and I'm intrigued to see that team this season.
They did. Okay, so guys, parting shots because we're a little bit over 30 minutes. And we agreed, right, Raj? We're not doing anything over 30, 35 minutes. We're going to keep it short, sweet, to the point.
Yeah.
We all like to talk. Niners record this year. I'm going to start with my man at 49ers Access. And if you're not following Sterling, tell people where to follow you.
Yeah, you can follow me on Instagram at 49ers.access. That's where I have all the updates, latest news, rumors, all that nice 49er news for you out there. But on Twitter, that's where I get my hot takes and get myself in trouble constantly with Adam Schefter.
Yeah.
So 49ers_access is where you're going to find me on Twitter. But when it comes to records this year, and it's always hard because I always forget that there's a 17-game season. So
Sure.
I think in my head, I think 11-6, kind of 12-5 is that nice kind of sweet spot. I'm not going to go out and say they're going to be 14-3. I'm not going to go that far. It is a war of attrition in the NFL, and then I just have a lot of question marks when it comes to that. And while we're all crossing our fingers and hoping they can stay healthy, I think 11-5, 11-6 guys are going to miss games. It just is what it is. And I think it depends on who misses games, and maybe we do see Trey Lance against Justin Fields at week 8. For all we know, who knows?
Yeah,
maybe we see him week 5. Like we don't know what's going to happen. I think 11-6 is that nice sweet spot. The Cardinals got better, the Rams got a little better, Seahawks got worse. So it could kind of be week 17. Here we go again. That last week of the season. I think 11-6 is that nice sweet spot.
Raj.
I think 11 wins at least because this team is so talented. We have the majority of the same team we had on the 2019 season. I mean, we've lost a few players, like we said, DeForest Buckner. You don't have Kendrick Bourne. There's a few players here, Sanders. But for the most part, the key players are there. And this team has all the talent in the world. The return of Nick Bosa. You got Kittle coming back healthy, and he's revamped. You have the revamped O-line. You have the return of Jimmy Garoppolo, if he can stay healthy. And if he's not there, you got Trey Lance inserted into this offseason. You got the second year of Brandon Ayuk, and we all have high expectations. The return of Debo. We could sit here all day. We know all the players on the team. But this roster, what I'm saying is star-studded. 11 wins, I think, is their floor. They can win at least 11. I know the NFC West is very tough, but looking at that schedule, it lines up very, I wouldn't say easy, but it lends itself to where they can start off really hot. And that's exactly what they did in 2019. They got off to a hot start.
Yep.
I know the bye week early is going to kind of kick their butt. I think towards the stretch at the end of the season with the long extra game, it might catch up. Like you said, Sterling, there might be some injuries. There's bound to be a trap game. Maybe Bengals game might catch them out of line. In 2019, we lost that Falcons game out of nowhere. So there's going to be a few games where you stumble and you lose. I think 11 is the floor, but I could see this team, if they hit on all cylinders, everything's right, everything bounces the right way because you need a little bit of luck in this league. I think they can win 13 games. I say 13-4 is their absolute ceiling, but I think 11 games at the very least because they're so talented. But in order to do that, they have to stay healthy, and that has not been easy for this team for a long time.
That's a good point. I think the floor is certainly 11, 10 games. I think 10 games would be disappointing almost.
Yeah.
And I think that's because there is a lot of talent on this team. And after the draft, you are expecting someone like Banks to come in and make an impact. Like he just looks like a lineman that might make a good impact right away. You know what I mean? And like kind of shore up a spot where the 49ers may have been a little bit not that there was like a turnstile, but you know what I mean? Like have some consistency there. I think Trey Sermon coming in and making an impact right away. Again, this is all like if it happens perfectly, right? I think you have a back that could come in and change the game a little bit, right? Like he's not going to break 80-yard runs, but he's just going to be like he's going to be a bruiser to Raheem Mostert's the Lightning, right? Like the Thunder to the Lightning kind of concept. And obviously, like we'll see if Trey Lance gets sprinkled in. But yeah, I think 11, 12, 13. Who knows, man? There's a big possibility for this team to be good. I think we could all agree that last year was a mirage. Like last year was an unusual year simply due to injuries. Like the 49ers are not a 6-10 team. Like they're not that team. So we'll see what happens. If you're not following me, a 49ers podcast, type that in on Instagram. All one word, a 49ers podcast. And then on Twitter, I am. What is my Twitter?
If they're not following you, they're doing it.
No, listen, pal. Listen, you didn't even drop your social media because everyone here is following you already. Okay, so and again, if you're here and you're not following Raj, thank you for randomly stumbling into our first episode. But we will be back every 2 weeks or so. There's no formality to this. As you can see, we just put this together today. We're going to get some logos next time. I told Raj my logo is going to be a my computer broke, my personal computer broke, so I'm on my work computer. And then we're gonna get back, and then we'll talk there's plenty of stuff to talk about. The NFL news cycle sleeps for no one. So Sterling, thank you so much, man. We'd love to have you on again. Like you're a friend, you're awesome. You've supported my pod, and I think the three of us can agree we all support each other here equally, and we all want to see each other succeed. So no toxicity here, guys.
Toxicity. Yeah, follow both of these guys if you haven't. 49er Access, dude, his graphics are unbelievable. Actually,
Yes, they are, by the way.
I'll post fast and stuff because I'm always at work, but he puts in so much detail on his graphics. I'm like, oh man, I wish I could do that too. But good page. I love your page, and you always have good insight. But your hot takes, I love on Twitter. I remember the day Rich Eisen came up on you, and I was like, oh man, but because you did quote him.
I did.
You did give him his
Rich Eisen?
He
didn't give me time. I had a thread going. He just came right at me.
Man. But anyways, go follow him.
Damn, bro.
Yeah, it is a continual thing, but you guys are two of the best people in the community. I love what you guys do, whether it's the page or the podcast. You guys are two of the best guys here in Niner fans community. Again, I'll do any time. I will make time for both you guys.
Thank you, and likewise, and everyone that tuned in today. I know some people have been coming in and out. Everyone that left comments, thank you guys. I mean, again, this is the first of hopefully a few, and sometimes we start off slow, but this was really cool. I really enjoyed it, guys. Thanks so much.
Thanks. Thanks again for coming on, Sterling.
And subscribe, guys. Subscribe. What they say, hit that like button, hit subscribe. All right, guys. See you next time.